Okay, here we go. Ding, 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 and a 1, a 2, a 1, 2.
With graduation and impending job searches in the air, Stony Brook University is bringing to bear the full breadth of its resources to create the best possible experience for soon-to-be university alumni. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Bernstein, the interim president of Stony Brook University, and in this episode of Beyond the Expected, the Coronavirus Effect, we'll see how professionals across our campus are working to deliver the special celebrations the class of 2020 so richly deserves, as well as the career assistance they need in a very unpredictable and challenging economic climate. And we'll also learn about the overall support the network of university alumni will offer to help this unique class transition from being students to being alumni. Let me introduce our guest before we start our conversation. Diana Hannan is the Executive Director of University Conferences and Special Events. She has more than 3 decades of professional experience in events management and planning, with more than 15 years producing Stony Brook University events. This has included everything from academic conferences to galas to one-time special events like groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings to annual milestone events like the State of the University Address and commencement ceremonies themselves. All that said, perhaps nothing could adequately prepare Diana and her team for the challenges they have faced trying to provide appropriate celebratory send-offs for our class of 2020. We'll get to hear about what Diana and her team have been up to in this regard and dedicating themselves to helping our new alumni feel celebrated and honored as they graduate from our university. Kimberly Joy Dixon is the Director of Employer Engagement and Diversity Recruitment in the University Career Center. She builds and maintains relationships with employers from various industries and sectors who seek to recruit our students for internships, full-time jobs, part-time positions, and volunteer opportunities. Kimberly also develops programs to connect students to employers that want to diversify their workforce, and she prepares our students for national diversity-related internship programs. We'll get to hear from her about the unique challenges, but also the heartening successes and reasons for optimism in our Career Center in connecting the class of 2020 with employers as they pursue their careers during the COVID-19 emergency. And finally, Matt Colson, the Executive Director of Alumni Relations and of the Stony Brook University Alumni Association, joins us. Matt is responsible for the overall development and oversight of events, programs, services, and communications that link Stony Brook's more than 200,000 living alumni worldwide. Matt works closely with the association's executive committee and develops student and alumni experiences that will create and sustain lifelong relationships among our alumni. Matt will talk to us about how alumni programs and alumni engagement are all combining to help alumni step up and support our students as they move into, indeed, a very challenging job environment. I want to thank all 3 of you for being with me today. Let's get started, and I'm going to, if you will, in a way, go in chronological order. I'm going to start with Diana. I want to talk about graduation planning, but first, maybe you can share with our viewers and our listeners how the COVID-19 emergency has affected the work of university events and conference planning. This is your unit. Probably had a huge impact from this emergency.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bernstein, for allowing me to participate today. I'm having the luxury of being here, and my team is out there working really hard, even at this moment as we speak, planning for an unexpected VIP visit. So, it's greatly affected our team as it has affected all of campus. Really good event planners, we plan meticulously. We plan for every detail. Exceptional event planners, we plan for the unexpected. So because our team, we have a great leader. We have Christina Cabral, our Director of University Events. She came to the team with great experience with international conferences and events worldwide. So she was really influential in helping us to plan for the unexpected. And when this first started, we started to gather all of our thoughts and plans and say, okay, we're going to move to the home environment. How are we going to do that? How do we keep our production schedule for commencement going? We planned for over a year to do commencement, so we just felt, okay, we're going to continue and just keep the planning going. But then as the virus started to really become more regional and really affect us, and then we realized, oh, we're not really going to come back, that's when our work changed, and that's when it all sort of went a little upside down. And
so let me ask. I know that you and the team, did a lot of extensive work in considering alternatives. So part of that, you reached out to other institutions to see what they were doing. Yes.
Right. So right away, usually event planning, it rains and you're prepared for that. This was something that affected everyone. So right away, we got on the call with our SUNY colleagues, and we started a conference call with them. What were they experiencing, and how were they going to address commencement? We looked nationwide. How was the nation going to handle commencement activities, and what were they doing? What was the messaging? What was the plan? And then as we got further in, we realized, well, the New York region was very different from some of the outer regions. So we started a more regional New York call to see what our colleagues were doing there.
Oh, fascinating. So indeed, in gathering all that information, as we all now know, ultimately you rolled forward to a decision, obviously not to have an in-person traditional commencement ceremony on May 22nd, but instead to have a virtual degree conferral ceremony. Can you share with us how students initially responded to the news that we would not be having a traditional commencement and instead would be going virtual?
I think that the students' reaction was very appropriate. They felt what we felt. Commencement is a historic institutional event. It marks a milestone. It marks that you were here and you accomplished. And so then suddenly to be told that you couldn't do that, you couldn't share with your families and friends, this is something that they earned and worked really hard for, that was really hard to take. So we really listened to the students. We had the USG and the GSO do surveys.
This is our undergraduate student government, our graduate student organization.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we partnered with them. What do the students want? And so we knew that this just wasn't our decision. And then they came back to us very strongly to say they wanted an in-person commencement, but then as the weeks went by, they sort of had the resolve and understood that we were going to have to do something a little different. So we were very specific to say that this was a virtual degree conferral celebration. So we're going to mark that conferral of your degrees on May 22nd. And then hopefully in the future, when it's safe to do so, we'll come back and celebrate.
And that was a question I wanted to ask you. What's the latest on possible discussions, plans to bring the class of 2020 back, if you will, for a more traditional ceremony? Is there some discussion going on about that?
Stony Brook University is one of the few universities that still has our December commencement. And that actually was an advantage for us because we have the opportunity, if it's safe to do so, to move the May commencement to December. That's our intention and our hope. If not, then obviously when it's safe to do so, we'll look to a future event.
And I just want to chime in your point about student reaction. Certainly in the president's office, we had a lot of responses from students when our formal communication went out about the change in commencement planning. I would say overall, there are always outliers, as we know, but overall student response, obviously students were very disappointed, but I think their response is generally very measured, thoughtful, acknowledging the challenges of the moment and hoping that we would have some sort of virtual activity right here in May and maybe something in the future, as you say, in December. So let's talk about the virtual event for a minute. Walk us through the steps, if you will, you and the team took to plan this virtual degree ceremony. There was a recent activity yesterday. You might want to share with us about it. How did you get there and what did you do?
So we, looked at the program and then we realized, how do we take something that's live and translate all of that energy into something that was virtual? And also to compress it a little bit, we realized that let's just keep the focus on the students because it's about the students. And some of the more complex things we weren't going to do until we were actually live. And then we started to design a virtual event. And that meant sitting down and really just deciding what was the most important part and how could the students participate. So we reached out and we got really creative, and things like the Stony Brook Vocalists group are going to join us, and they're going to do a special performance. We have the Stony Brook Marching Band is going to perform for us. We have we kept the student competition. We worked with Dean Rick Cateau, and he was able to facilitate the student speaker competition. So we kept the student pieces that we knew were the most critical.
And all of these activities you mentioned, they're going to be patched together into a transmission, an event that everyone will be able to watch on May 22nd. One point to emphasize here, it's not real-time streaming. It's actually a so-called taped event that people are going to be able to watch. Is that right?
For the safety of everyone, we felt that that was the best way to produce this. But if the students go to our Stony Brook website, stonybrook.edu/commencement, they're going to see all the ways that they can participate. So even though it is pre-recorded, we are going to broadcast live together at one time, 12 o'clock on May 22nd. And then this gives the students an opportunity in unison in their homes with their families and friends to also virtually celebrate with us. So we encourage them to go on Instagram, to Zoom, have Zoom parties, and to celebrate at home while we all broadcast together.
And would you say that these plans and steps that you and the events team have taken are consistent with what's going on at most other institutions, or is there a lot of variety? What's your sense, what you're hearing, both regionally, as you mentioned earlier, and nationally?
I think Stony Brook was one of the strong leaders in what the plans were going to be, and we took best practices from other universities, and they emulated us as well, so we all shared. And I think ours is going to be original, and I think it's going to be really wonderful.
That's great. That's great. Well, let me turn to Kimberly now, and we'll come back to you, Diana. Kimberly, this is obviously a very busy time of year for any university career center, certainly for Stony Brook's, and obviously a most unique year for the Career Center in working with our graduating students. So maybe you could start, for the sake of our listeners and viewers, what does the Career Center typically do? Mm-hmm. And how have you, started to spool up in response to the COVID emergency?
Sure, absolutely. So the Career Center, we're a centralized office here at Stony Brook University. We have about 16 staff members catering to all of our students and alumni for life, which is awesome. And the services we provide, we help students figure out from the time they get here what they would like to do with their life. And we have several ways that we do that after graduation, what career choices they may want. We also help students figure out how to gain experience while they're on campus, for on-campus employment, as well as off-campus internships, research opportunities, volunteer opportunities. And then when it's time for them to graduate, our 2020 graduates, we help them to apply and get prepared and ready for the workforce and for the interview process for both internships and full-time opportunities. And we do this through one-on-one appointments, through group appointments, through a series of different types of career prep workshops. We work alongside departments to provide help and assistance and workshops in the classroom, in addition to experiential learning opportunities within the academic departments as well. And we work very closely with industry, local, regional, national industry partners.
I'm interested to pursue the industry piece in a second, but just going back to your workshops and your one-on-ones, so can you give us a sense of, what are you talking about in those workshops? What are you talking about in one-on-one interactions with students?
Sure. So, of course, it depends on the population that we're focused on. So we do workshops that are focused on freshmen, that are focused on transfer students. And then we have those that are focused on upperclassmen. So these workshops can be, preparatory on how to interview, on how to brand yourself online through LinkedIn. It can be practical on how to enhance your resume. It can be, sharing with students how to understand more about their personalities and how that plays out in the workplace. It can be also about how to network more effectively, how to practice your pitch. What is a pitch? How do you communicate effectively with individuals, not just employers.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that you're engaged with departments. Some of this will vary by discipline or field for the students, right?
Absolutely, yes. The way we are connected with academic departments depends on the level of connection, also what we can do in the classroom. I mean, we work with various departments on campus, whether it's the College of Business and helping them to get employers in the classroom for presentations on academic topics, to working with departments on experiential learning projects, industry projects throughout the semester as well. So there are several different ways. We also really promote on their websites as well. We have what would be feeds from our handshake system, which we have our jobs and internships and part-time positions on. We feed them into department websites as well. So the departments are helping us to help students.
And you mentioned about helping people prepare for interviews and so forth. So you do mock interviews with people. You sort of put them in the cauldron and test drive what their pitches are.
Absolutely. And before now, we did do that in person as well. And the Career Center staff is prepared to do that. But in addition to that, we bring in industry partners. And we have industry partners do mock interviews in person. And now we're already planning for virtual mock interviews and being able to do that most recently at the end of May and June throughout the summer. But of course, also preparing for the fall semester if need be.
So, yeah, interesting to hear. What are the adjustments? You've already mentioned a couple of them. What are the adjustments that you and the Career Center team are making, have had to make, with the COVID-19 crisis, and how do you anticipate your work over the next several weeks, obviously, as we move the class to graduation and then beyond into the summer? It is high season for you, right? But yes. It's a unique season.
Yes, it is. High season and very unique. So, many of our appointments, our one-on-ones and group appointments and workshops were in person prior to this crisis. And now everything is virtual. So we are utilizing the systems that we have with Zoom, with Hangouts, with Handshake, and we're hosting our one-on-one appointments in that way. We were already doing phone appointments with some folks and some virtual appointments with alumni when needed, but now everything is done online. So it was a very short ramp up for us. It wasn't completely unusual, but it was interesting. And
well, actually, that's an interesting point. I mean, I assume it's not as if in the past you didn't have some students doing interviews virtually with far-flung employers or maybe potential interested employers from overseas, right? This was happening, but not on the same scale.
Right, not on the same scale, and now the industry is having to do this as well, figure it out.
So now I assume you're also giving people advice about how to present themselves on Zoom, right? I know from my own experience, people need coaching in that, I think.
Yes, we're offering coaching in the one-on-one appointments. We're offering workshops to help them how to prepare virtually for that process, but even more so for our graduates who are graduating and interns. How do you prepare to onboard as an intern or full-time hire in a virtual setting? What are some of the things you need to think about and be prepared for? Be a little bit more patient with the process as well.
I also imagine some people need some coaching about how to present themselves literally on a screen.
Yes. What should you wear? What should be in your background? What shouldn't be in your background? Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about the students entering the market now, obviously in a very challenging set of circumstances. And also, I want to draw you out talking about some of our alumni, who have, left the university in the past few years. But first, let's start with the students entering a very uncertain market. Mm-hmm. What's sort of the key advice you and the team are giving? I'm sure you've had some pretty stressful conversations, or I should say stressed out conversations with some of our graduating students. What are the things you're hearing, and what are you messaging back with them?
So the few things that we are hearing are, there are some students who are graduating in May, and because of the crisis, the employers that they already had offers from have had a halt on hiring or had to push back the date that the student was actually, or the soon-to-be graduate would have to start. We're also hearing students who did not have jobs yet wondering, is it possible for me to get a job right now, given the crisis? I didn't already have one, and now what? What do I do? So, the advice that we're having for students is to pay attention. There are industries that are still hiring, the service industry, healthcare. There are several different areas and types of companies in regionally, locally, and also nationally. So we're making sure that we're providing students with that information because they don't know where to look. So the biggest question is, where do I find these jobs? Where can I find them? And so we're showcasing that on our website. We have we added a page on our website that's dedicated to showing students and alumni where there are jobs right now, with a string of different sites that they can click on. And the first and foremost, we direct them to Handshake, because that is the system that we're telling all employers that want to hire Stony Brook talent and alumni talent, that's where they should be posting their roles. And a good 75% of the companies that are recruiting currently still have their positions posted on that Handshake system.
So that was my next question. So you're seeing right now it's about 75% of the normal activity. Is that what I'm hearing you say, or is it more or less in terms compared to last year, say?
So in comparison, I would say right now, the Career Center, we did a survey with employers that recruit Stony Brook students to see who's still hiring and who's still, going to take on those interns and full-time hires. And a good 70% of the companies that had already extended offers are still going to stick with those offers. And we have right now, there's about between 30 and 35% of companies that are still recruiting interns, and a good 60 to 65% that are actually still recruiting, in the process of recruiting. But the 75% I was sharing with you earlier are those who have positions available, whether they're internships or full-time positions that have those positions posted on our Handshake system, and not just on their site.
Their own site.
Yes,
right.
Making it easier for our students to get to those positions.
Are you seeing? It may be too early for you to tell, given that our formal commencement date of May 22 is still a couple of weeks away. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing a big change in volume of students engaging with the center? More, less, the same? What are you and your colleagues seeing?
So during the transition process, when students were just realizing that they were going to be taking virtual classes for the rest of the semester,
right.
There was a lull. They were really focused on their academics and understanding.
Yeah.
And we believe right now that although normally our summers we would see less students, we're gearing up to see a lot more students, because now that classes are over, students are now realizing we have to figure this out. It's not the same as it used to be. So we are expecting more student traffic over the summer, virtually, of course, but we're gearing up with more workshops and more ways that they can connect with employers.
Are you seeing a change, an uptick, or a decrease in inquiries and engagement from already established alumni? In other words, those who are a year out, 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out. Has there been a change in that kind of traffic for your center, or is it still pretty much the same as previous years?
Right now, it's pretty much the same, but as things continuously change for industry, it's changing monthly, weekly, daily. Right. We do expect also that there may be an increase of alumni who will need assistance. But what we have seen is an increase in alumni who want to help, who are reaching out and saying, we know students are concerned, and I've been mentoring a student, I've been helping students in any way possible. So that we're very grateful for, and that's one of the I think the bright lights in all of the silver linings.
And we're going to talk with Matt in a moment about that. Let me ask you one more question in this segment, Kimberly. Is just, we talked with Diana about the events team reaching out to other SUNY campuses or other institutions across the country. What were they going to do about commencement activities? Mm-hmm. What kind of network are you engaged with, you and your team in the Career Center? What are you hearing from other SUNY campuses or other institutions with which you compare yourself?
Yes, we've spent a lot of time weekly, actually, over the last 6 to 7 weeks, engaging with on Zoom webinars with other institutions just to figure out what they're doing, and hearing their best practices. Our national association, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, which helps us to connect with schools and industry all across the country, has been very useful in us being able to share a platform, being able to share. But we've also done our own consistent town hall webinars, even with employers, to learn about what their needs are and what they're doing at this time as well.
That's great. Well, let me bring Matt into the conversation for a minute. You know, we've been talking about alumni, and certainly with reference to the activities of our Career Center. And, you know, we started off talking with Diana about the alumni we are about to create in the next couple of weeks, a large number of them. Students, obviously, from the moment they, you know, become part of the Stony Brook family, they're on a journey that culminates, and they're becoming part of that 200,000 number I mentioned at the top of our broadcast. Maybe you could start, Matt, by, you know, sharing with listeners and viewers about, you know, the role of alumni in, you know, engaging with our graduates, and of course, we'll then elaborate, talk about the activities of the association and your office.
Well, certainly, and thank you, President Bernstein. You know, while this is a most challenging time and unprecedented, what I've always been reminded by our alumni is that they serve as the university's best historians. And so while times are seemingly different, we do have moments in our history that alumni are not only able to show sympathy for today, but they have empathy because they went through something similar. I think about the class of 2008 also entering a challenging market, and they have since persevered and found great success, and I'm confident we'll be able to help the class of 2020 do the same. But also our graduates from the late 60s and early 70s, whose semester was similarly disrupted by protests and challenging times around the Vietnam War. And so I say that with some comfort that we will get through this together, and our alumni have demonstrated that over the years. They're a global network, and I always look at our alumni base. I don't know all 200,000, but
they know you.
But I think I'd like to think so. But what I do know is that every student and recent graduate can reach out to an alum who is a complete stranger, knowing they have at least one thing in common, and it's their alma mater. And it's an alma mater they all share pride and joy about.
You know, it's a really interesting point. I want to draw you out in a second, Matt, a little more detail about the work of the Alumni Association and of your Office of Alumni Relations. I think you've made an important point, though, I want to emphasize for our listeners and viewers. You know, it is a very challenging time, a tragic time in many respects, and a fearsome time. In the same context, there have been other classes here at Stony Brook and other classes at other universities and colleges that have graduated in the midst of very, very grave difficulties. You mentioned 2008, the Vietnam War. You know, I think of my late father. He never got a commencement ceremony. He was a member of the class of 1944, and his collegiate experience was disrupted by World War II. So, you know, that sets a context and at least gives some historical sense, I think, for our students and faculty and staff, as well as our alumni about what we're all going through. You know, we've heard from Kimberly, and Diana even gestured toward this. You know, our alumni can and do play a very important role in facilitating our graduates moving on with their lives and their careers. Maybe you can tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about the work of the Alumni Association and of the Office of Alumni Relations in creating that connection between graduates and, if you will, emerging alumni and the alumni who are already out there.
Certainly. So we've worked hard over the years to weave alumni into the fabric of the university community, both on campus and around the world. Our alumni not only are available for networking, we assume and expect the professional networking, but also relocation networking. For example, our students aspiring to be medical professionals, we have a host program where if they contact the Office of Alumni Relations, we have a list of alumni who have raised their hand, who are working at a variety of different hospitals and medical facilities around the country, where we could pair you up. And so if you're moving to San Diego to do your residency there, we can connect you with an alum there so that you're not completely stranger there, right? You may have one friend when you arrive, one more than you had before that. And so that's a really important part because people need to exercise that more, and that's not unique to Stony Brook, that's everywhere. We all could leverage and exercise that network more. Of course, everyone loves to save money, and alumni associations are notorious for having great, perks and programs like that. But ultimately, we want to keep you, proud of your alma mater, informed, engaged, and supportive. And that's what we've seen most right now is that during times of crisis, humanity always rises to show its best. And our alumni have done so.
I want to draw you out on that, but let me take a moment just to reintroduce our guests and welcome viewers and listeners to this episode of the Beyond the Expected podcast, The Coronavirus Effect. We're talking today with Diana Hannan, the Executive Director of Conferences and Special Events at Stony Brook University. Been talking with her, and we'll talk with her some more about planning in the midst of a crisis where we cannot have traditional commencement activities. We're also talking with Kimberly Dixon, the Director of Employer Engagement and Diversity Recruitment in our University Career Center. And she's been talking with us and will talk more with us about the engagement of the Career Center with our graduates who are entering, obviously, a very challenging jobs market. And finally, we're also talking with Matt Colson, the Executive Director of Alumni Relations and of our Alumni Association at Stony Brook. Over 200,000 living Seawolves out there, Seawolf alumni who afford a very special resource to our graduates. So, Matt, you made a very important point. I want to resume this conversation with you. You made an important point that our graduates become part of a large community, which by definition, if they reach out and reach to any member of that community, there's going to be instant recognition. You know, whether there can be substantial connections or not depends on the personalities and the issues. Hopefully it does lead to substantial connections, but immediately there's a cachet, there's an opportunity to start a conversation because everyone is a member of the so-called Seawolf family, and that's an important reminder for our graduates and for all our alumni. You were talking about some of the services and activities that alumni can provide to graduates. Maybe you can talk a little further about what those are, tell our graduates what's in store for them, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's unique about the current circumstances with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Sure, certainly. And continuing education, first and foremost, our students, as we know, at high rates, go on to continue their education, but also soon after graduating your second and or third degree, you do miss that, we are curious, right? That is part of our mantra. And we see a desire for continued intellectual stimulation. And so you'll see we have a whole suite of faculty lectures and alumni experts giving talks and engaging in dynamic conversations with one another. Yes, those will look a little bit different right now. We have 2 this week that are on Zoom. But we're seeing a tremendous uptick in alumni activity and attention because they know, first and foremost, this is a time that their alma mater and its students need them most, but also their lives too have slowed down, and so they are more attentive and able to participate. And so you can
a little silver lining in the cloud, huh?
Yes. Well, I would say for our students, now is the time to network. Our alumni are most attentive and available compared to where they were 6 months ago, where they were, part of the rat race and just trying to keep up with their own lives, which we all can relate to.
Really interesting point. So it also seems clear that obviously these activities by alumni as mentors, as agents of networking capacity and so forth, it obviously resonates powerfully with the work of the Career Center. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the connections between alumni affairs and the Career Center, and we'll draw Kimberly into this conversation too.
Yeah, so our alumni career services and our working relationship with the Career Center as it relates to the Alumni Association is our pride and joy. It is one that I know is first in class, that other schools look and envy the working collaboration that we have, both in sharing resources, but also sharing vision and priorities on how we best serve our students today, but also tomorrow. And so our Alumni Career Services program certainly will help the class of 2020 this year, but also next year. And there'll be a time that they want to make their first career move, and we'll be here for them then. And then there'll be a time that they want to retire, and we work with them during their encore career, as we call it. So we're really proud of the shared vision and priority that the relationship with Stony Brook is a lifelong one, and one that we'll be part of to support them throughout.
And that worth emphasizing, the work of the Career Center, obviously we're very much focused on the contemporary graduates, and they're graduating into this very challenging environment occasioned by the COVID-19 emergency. At the same time, this is a center that engages with alumni throughout the span of their lives and their careers. And you're mentioning different phases of life, different issues, different questions. Kimberly, anything you'd like to add about this connection between Alumni Affairs and the Career Center that Matt's noted?
I mean, I would agree with Matt, of course. I think we're top notch.
So no rebuttal here for Matt, right?
No, absolutely not. And I can just say that, we're very thoughtful about the connection and being able to help alumni, from the time right when they graduate to being able to connect them with future graduating Seawolves as well. We have some great programming together, from the mentorship to, to working with them, to working with alumni when they first graduate to make sure that their first step is one of the best steps that they could make. And then, as Matt said, even as alumni are going on their encore careers, they always want to give back. They always want to find a way to connect and do and help. So we bring them back for presentations, for panels, for mentorship, and also in connecting them back with faculty that they used to work with to do classroom presentations.
Right. And, I'd like to emphasize, for the sake of our viewers and listeners, and I'm not just saying this in my current role as interim president, it's a fact. I mean, I think what Kimberly and Matt have both accomplished and their teams have accomplished in the Career Center and in alumni relations and alumni affairs is very special and exemplary. I think, some years ago, I don't think this connectivity was there. The Career Center had not yet spooled up to the dimensions that exist today. And frankly, in previous generations, alumni relations usually were focused more on, parties during homecoming weekend than anything else. Now, we do have parties in homecoming weekend, and we always will. But I think what both of you have accomplished and your teams have accomplished in the Career Center and in alumni affairs is a perfect example of what this partnership can do on behalf not only of our graduates, but indeed of our alumni throughout the balance of their career. So I really salute both of you. Kimberly, I'm curious, is there a particular bright spot you can point to right now in the midst of all of this turmoil involving employers and our graduates? And Matt, I'll turn to you after Kimberly responds to see what you have to say in this regard. Something that sticks out for you as an inspiring moment. Remind us of what this is all about and of the progress we're going to make despite COVID-19.
Yes. I mean, first off, I'd like to say, just from talking to employers, they're still very optimistic about wanting, great talent and wanting that talent from Stony Brook. We thought for a moment that this would decrease the amount of employers that want to recruit with Stony Brook. And, that's not what we're hearing right now. So I think that's great. I mean, they're trying to figure out how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it. But the fact is, they still want our great Stony Brook
quality
talent.
of our students speaks for itself, right? That's always there.
Yes. And I would also say that the hiring, I mean, yes, some companies have had to halt their hiring right now, but, we're speaking to Stony Brook graduates that, that are graduating in May, that are going to be working at Amazon, that are going to be working at Google. Our Stony Brook University hospitals are hiring nurses, for example. I mean, there's a host of others, Memorial Sloan and TTI and Target. There's a group of companies that are still out there hiring, and our Stony Brook students are going to be working.
It's really
so
encouraging
we're excited
to hear.
Yeah.
Matt, what about from the perspective of the Alumni Association, Alumni Affairs? What are some of the highlights you're seeing so far?
Well, the highlights I'm seeing is when the world pauses and comes to a stop, people reflect, right? And so we've been fortunate that while we've had a great body of alums who have been regularly active and engaged, we're seeing a tremendous influx. I've spent so much time meeting alumni and speaking to them for the first time, and so there's a reflection taking place, right? And people are thinking back, and they're reaching their hand behind them. They're looking back at where they came from and how they got to where they are today. And they are looking to shepherd in the next class into what we call the real world, right? And make sure that they are safe and sound. So yes, we have challenges before us, but they are challenges that will be met. And also, when I think about that alumni network for our students, let's not forget our faculty have tremendous relationships, many of which, Kimberly, Joy, and I are envious of and wish we had too. And so, the alumni connections do not reside just in the Alumni Association and the Career Center. The faculty have the privilege to watch students after they graduate literally continue to grow up and can make very personal, easy introductions for them. So that is a silver lining in that people are reflecting and they're thinking back and they're thinking about Stony Brook.
That's right. And, you made this point earlier, and again, worth emphasizing, a year from now, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now, one of our graduates encounters somebody and a comment is made, oh, I too am a graduate of Stony Brook. It's like when you meet somebody way out there and you establish that you're both from the same hometown. There's a connection immediately. You may not become the best of friends. Hopefully you do, but there's a connection that can't be denied and really is lifelong. Kimberly, one thing I meant to ask you, just to circle back for a second, in the immediacy of the degree conferral ceremony that'll soon take place, what's going on with respect to summer internships and summer activity? This is the immediate concern, I think, for many of our graduates. Up, down, the same? What are you seeing there?
So we are seeing that there are some employers who are unable to do a virtual internship. So there have been some that halted, but there are some that instead of disbanding the internship program, they're decreasing it. So maybe it was going to be an 8-week internship, and now it's going to be 6 weeks or 4 weeks, and it's going to be 100% virtual. And maybe there's going to be some more training and development for those interns instead of client-facing opportunities. So the good thing there is that the students are still learning, and they're going to be prepared for full-time employment based on the training that the company is willing to give them during this internship time. So there have been some changes, but there are companies, again, like I mentioned, there's about 30% of companies that are still looking for interns. So that's good for students to know who are still looking. And then we have some interns that we already know, that I've received information from that just received offers and going to be working for companies like Microsoft, which is awesome. So there's still opportunities. Yes, there are less. We will say that, but there are still opportunities for students, and they're changing.
That's really heartening to hear. Our student affairs vice president and the dean of students, Rick Cateau, he recently sent out a message to students about, quote, making the most of their summer, close quote. And I guess you're giving some guidance here, Kimberly, about how to do that in, some pretty challenging times. Matt, similarly, just again, looking from the alumni perspective, you have any specific advice for the summer, both for our alumni and for our alumni-to-be, the alumni we will create on May 22nd?
The first thing that comes to mind is, a journey from point A to point B is rarely a straight line. And so when I think about something you worked so hard towards and aspired to achieve, you have achieved it. You've achieved and received your degree. But now you are thinking about the next step you're going to take, and you may need to take a side step first before you move forward. And so thinking about if there's an opportunity you're patiently waiting for, stay prepared and do all of those things over the summer to remain prepared and best position yourself so that you are the most attractive candidate when those opportunities present themselves. I do think that there are some employers, while they did have to downsize, there will be a time that they are hiring again. We know that, and they may not want to hire everyone back because some may have been weak links in the company, and that's a golden opportunity for our, the new talent, the rising stars, and also for alums who are thinking about a career transition to spend this time thinking about how do they reinvent themselves, or the recent grad who realizes now what they thought they wanted to do is not what they want to do, and they can use this time very productively to start to personally rebrand themselves, professionally position themselves in a different way for when the market opens up.
It's really excellent points. And again, to emphasize, both the Alumni Association and the Career Center are both there to help our students and our alumni do just that. They can reach out and get guidance, support, and recommendations about how to pursue that kind of self-reflection, rebranding. As you say, Matt, use the opportunity to advance one's career and one's interests. Diana, let's circle back to you. We haven't heard from you in a little while. You're thinking about the degree conferral ceremony that will take place on May 22nd. I mean, how do you think students will react to what you and the team have put together in light of these comments from both Kimberly and Matt about, getting them engaged with if they're not already, with our Career Center and with our Alumni Affairs unit?
I think, reflecting what Matt and Kimberly both said, this is going to be their story. They're going to have this to share, and I think it's going to bond them as alum for the future. And I think they're going to really, when they meet each other after Stony Brook, they're going to say, we had this shared experience.
Right. It's there is a unique quality to this class. I mean, not for circumstances any of us would have wanted, but it's unique nonetheless. And I think they can wear that as a source of pride and commitment to one another. Let me open up to all three of you. As we have a little time left in our broadcast. Talk about the sort of broader implications of what's going on. We talk about what challenging times can do to people. We also talk about what challenging times can do to organizations. Here at Stony Brook, we talk about this COVID-19 emergency making our university stronger. We have people around the community may recently have seen signs, hashtag Stony Brook Strong. We're trying to highlight what we're doing in response to the crisis. Maybe each of you could take a moment to reflect on, the impact of this crisis on your organization and how you see it fitting into the university as a whole, a university, obviously, that's being dramatically changed by this crisis almost daily. Why don't we start with you, Diana?
So the Conferences and Special Events Department manages the Charles B. Wong Center, and that became the point where all the community drop-off and donations were going to happen. So each day on our morning team call that we started as soon as this crisis happened, we've been heavily involved in the community donations and receiving that. We have been heavily involved in just trying to really make it really important for the students and listening to what everyone's concerns are. The pandemic was affecting the faculty, the staff, and the students as well. And we wanted to also make sure that we heard the deans. The deans and the faculty were very passionate about their involvement in commencement, and they wanted to make sure that their department convocations went forward. So we have over 40 department convocations also being produced within the same week as our virtual ceremony. So this way the deans and faculty can personally acknowledge their students.
So I want to emphasize something you've mentioned, Diana, for our listeners and viewers. So conferences and events has morphed into, on the one side, a kind of logistics operation for gathering donations and getting important supplies and equipment to various units at the university, and in particular, perhaps most importantly, University Hospital and Stony Brook Medicine. It's also been involved in developing an array of alternative activities, virtual events, as we've discussed. And you've also become, if I can say so, you've become the faculty and student whisperers on the campus, getting information from all of our disparate units. And you make the point, we have a wide array of academic units, all of which have different traditions around commencement. I think people don't appreciate that. Commencement, people think of the big event we normally have in Laval Stadium, which unfortunately we will not have this year on May 22nd. But there's also all these other events that take place in departments, in colleges and schools that make up our university. So do you anticipate virtual convocations, if you will, occurring in most of the units later this month?
Yes, every convocation is very personalized depending on that department. Like you said, they have their traditions and they wanted to be sure to hold true to those, and to have some will be doing Zoom, some will be doing, a virtual recording similar to what we started doing yesterday with you. And then others will do more just recognition and just acknowledging of the awards and the accomplishments of their students, because that's what was so important to them.
Yeah, I do want to mention, Diana's alluded to it, an array of deans and other senior leaders and I gathered yesterday to do some taping for this degree conferral ceremony. Diana and her team, and of course the telecommunications and production teams, did a great job. They're hard taskmasters. They worked us pretty hard, but I think hopefully the product will speak for itself. Kimberly, what about you? How do you see this, in the broader frame that Diana has addressed from her perspective and from your perspective in the Career Center and in career services?
So one of the things that I think has been great, when you're in the office together, you meet, you can pop into each other's offices and, be creative about the work that we do. One of the things that's happened with us, we're having to work virtually, is that we get to hear from everybody in the office more often. And I think for us, it has created, we consider ourselves the Career Center family anyway, but it has created an alliance between all of us and, one goal to do everything that we can for students and employers and making those connections between the two in this virtual setting. So it's sparked more creativity for us, which of course means more work, which we love. But it has created an environment where we are very enthusiastic about moving forward. We're very excited about the new things that we can do and how we are going to stick with our mission, but do it in innovative ways. So for us, it's been exciting. It's been a lot of work, but exciting.
So it's interesting, despite being dispersed, right, and not being physically connected the way you are normally in the Career Center itself, you feel that the team has a certain solidarity and connectivity that maybe even surpasses what it was before the pandemic started.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say because of our leadership and Mariana Savoca as our AVP, she's been phenomenal in helping to direct that. So it's been great.
That's terrific. And Matt, from the perspective of the Alumni Association and Alumni Affairs, what do you see?
Well, what I see is something that's always been part of Stony Brook's DNA for a very long time that's been realized and our might is being flexed, right? So there's so much that was already here that was Stony Brook Strong, but never really had to be put to task or tested the way it has been. And so that's what makes me so proud to hear from an alum surfacing in Hong Kong and another in Northern California to Austin, Texas, and of course right here on Long Island and New York City, metro area, that we've always been strong, but we've been tested. And so I kind of feel like maybe we've poked a bear, and that Stony Brook Alumni Network has responded by way of participating in the great work that Joan Dickinson did with mobilizing resources for our medical center, and the alumni coming forward first and foremost to make sure that our students had the funding and the resources that they needed to complete this semester most effectively and for our class of 2020 to graduate on time. And so that's demonstrated on our community-funded.stonybrook.edu website, where people have come out of the woodworks first and foremost to make sure our students have the resources and then are looking around to seek out other ways that they can help by sharing their employment opportunities, so on and so forth.
Adversity generates good outcomes, as you're pointing out. As the old saying, rough seas make good sailors, and I think that's true with the members of the Stony Brook University community. We have a few minutes left, so I want to turn to each of you personally now for some concluding questions. So the first question I want to put to the three of you is, we've talked about your units and your organizations. I want to ask you personally if you could reflect on how this emergency, this crisis, has affected you as obviously members of the community, but also as the professional leaders that you are at our university. What's changed for you? What do you see in terms of the path forward for yourselves? And again, Diana, why don't we start with you?
On a personal note, I'm the mom of three sons, and they are reservists, and they've been activated. I have a Nassau County police officer and 2 Army reservists. So from day one, they've been out in the field, and they've been
First responders
and working directly with the virus. So that really brought it home. This wasn't something that was happening to other people. This was, happening to my family and in my home. That helped me to be a stronger leader, I think, for my team, because I was learning from them, and I knew the urgency of it, and I knew the seriousness of it. So I think that helped me to be a stronger leader and see that my team really needed me to be taking the lead. We do our daily conference call from day one since this started, and it really helped us to become more of a family and really care, because we were all experiencing it together.
Well, we're very grateful to your sons, and we know they're doing a great job because they got a great mom. Kimberly, what about you?
Yes, so in my household, I have my husband, who's graduated from Stony Brook. He's an alum.
Hooray.
And an 11th grader, my daughter, and my mother, who's 77 years old. And so in my household, you know, one of the goals I had this year, we set goals every year, and back in December and January, I had said I want to be able to spend more time with my family. And look, I have that. I am spending more time with my family, and I think it's been wonderful because, you know, I'm getting an opportunity to laugh more, to, you know, really enjoy the little things. We're so busy all the time that this has really slowed us down just a little bit. And even with my larger family, I'm really big on family. You know, we have family Zoom cocktail nights every Friday night with the family, and this Friday we're gonna because my daughter missed her junior prom, we're all dressing up for her junior prom.
Oh, that's great.
So these kind of things
Marvelous.
make you realize how important your family and the people who are closest to you are.
Absolutely. Matt?
Yeah, Kimberly took the words out of my mouth. Certainly, we've been humbled, and we have a new appreciation and value for the home, literally, as we shelter in place. But I hope that what we can learn from this is when things are, quote unquote, normal again, however that looks like, and if our lives start to become so busy again, maybe this was a moment that we can learn from to preserve some of what is good right now, which is more time with the people we love most and more, you know, for the work that we're in, we meet with alumni when they're not at work, right? So that's in the evenings and on the weekends. Right. But I have enjoyed more dinners with my family.
That's great. So one final question for you three. We have just a couple of minutes left. Slightly different for each of you. So I'll start with Diana. Diana, just succinctly, what would you most want our students to get from the virtual degree conferral ceremony that you and your team have worked so hard to create?
I would just love to say to them that, you know, everyone really, really cares, and they tried incredibly hard to make this a really good experience for you. The passion that they've shown and the concern and the hard work that everybody's done to put it together was really because they really care about you. So I hope that you feel that. I hope that you experience that you celebrated home with us, and that you really enjoy what we put together for you. And we look forward to seeing you on campus when it's safe.
Wonderful, wonderful sentiment. Kimberly, what sort of nutshell of advice would you give to our students as they, you know, contemplate launching their careers in this challenging time?
I would say stay focused and believe that you can get what you want, and be willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to get what you want. The opportunities are there. They may be packaged a little bit differently than you expected, but they are there, and you have all the help you need from your Stony Brook family.
That's great. And Matt, slightly different context here. What message would you like to convey to the alumni network at this time as we contemplate, you know, conferring degrees on the class of 2020?
Think Stony Brook. Think Stony Brook, and think about how you can reconnect with Stony Brook, with each other, and where you might be in a position to help our students as they enter turbulent waters. I know the opportunities are out there, but we need our alumni to come forward with them and to share them, and to preserve everything that's so great about this institution.
Thank you, Matt. So I want to thank our three guests today: Diana Hannan, the Executive Director of University Conferences and Special Events; Kimberly Joy Dixon, Director of Employer Engagement and Diversity Recruitment in the University Career Center; and Matt Colson, the Executive Director of our Office of Alumni Relations and of the Alumni Association at Stony Brook. It's been terrific talking with you. I appreciate your taking the time at a very, very busy time. Your work with the class of 2020 will certainly be historic in and of itself. It's comforting to know that the class can draw on all three of you and your resources, perhaps now more than ever. And I want to thank all our listeners and viewers for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Expected, the Coronavirus Effect. I hope you all stay safe, stay healthy. I'm Michael Bernstein. We'll see you next time.